Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. Ancient whale skeleton. Archaeologists discovered a gigantic skeleton in Thailand almost perfectly preserved. It's believed to be about 5,000 years old and was discovered west of Bangkok in Samut Sakhon. Its skull alone is over 9 feet. Scientists believe the skeleton belongs to a bride's whale, which can still be found in the waters of Thailand but is now considered a protected species. So they're around, but there aren't nearly as many as there were 5,000 years ago. They discovered the skeleton 7.5 miles inland. That's a pretty shocking distance from the water. That means that the water was so much higher thousands of years ago, stretching way farther up the shore. And on the grand scale of things, 5,000 years isn't even that long. According to researchers from the National University of Singapore, discovering this ancient whale skeleton adds to the mounting evidence that something massive happened 6,000 to 3,000 years ago in the Gulf of Thailand. The shoreline was, in some places, 10 or 20 miles higher than it is today. Number 9. Mysterious insect organ. Scientists have just discovered a new organ. The only catch is that this organ isn't in the body of humans, but insects. Scientists found this new organ in 3 different groups of insects. It's a sensory organ designed to pick up vibrational signals, and it exists in plant hoppers, spittlebugs, and leafhoppers. Even more impressive is that scientists believe the bugs could use these vibrational signals to communicate with each other, turning plants into telephone lines. This organ works as a kind of receiver, but the message is sent using what researchers call timbal buckling. This communication happens when an organ inside the insect creates sound, combining with oscillatory motions to send very subtle vibrations along the surface of a plant. It's the same way that sound travels along a telephone line. One insect creates the signal, and another insect on the same surface then picks it up with the help of this organ. It may seem like a tedious discovery, but it has fascinating implications. For example, humans potentially now have a way to communicate with these specific bugs. Researchers can send signals to them received by their particular sensory organs to make the bugs react. For example, they could send a signal to keep the bugs away from specific plants, protecting crops. Plus, this discovery has flipped every idea we had about how insects communicate on its head. Scientists thought these insects picked up signals with hairs on their legs before this discovery. But as it turns out, they have an entire sensory organ inside their abdomen dedicated to communication. It's the same way we have a voice box. Number 8. Marble bathtub. In the ancient Greek city of Aphrodisias, located in Turkey, someone dropped off a unique marble bathtub from 1,800 years ago at the local museum. If you've ever wondered what it was like to take a bath as a wealthy Greek citizen, now you'll have a better idea. First of all, the bathtub is amazing. It's solid marble and decorated with intense lion head reliefs. It's a unique specimen, unlike anything previously found in Turkey before. It's actually the only marble bathtub ever discovered in all of Turkey, which is saying a lot. As the borderland between Asia and Europe, Turkey has housed countless empires throughout history, yet none of them left behind a fully intact bathtub. This tub is the only example in the whole country. Of course, archaeologists have found plenty of ordinary ancient bathtubs. It's just that someone made them using layers of mud. In other words, ordinary citizens had to have mud baths or just stand in the rain to get clean. But this tub belonged to one of the wealthiest citizens in the city, probably a wealthy business person or a state administrator. It could even have been in the home of the region's ruler. Number 7. Life on Europa. 390 million miles away from us is Europa, one of Jupiter's many moons. In a recent new study, scientists believe they have identified the proper ingredients on Europa for the sustainment of life. In other words, scientists recently announced that this moon far away in the solar system could be hosting, if not intelligent life, then some basic life forms. Part of this hypothesis comes from a connection scientists made between Greenland and Europa. Stanford University geophysicists compared Europa to the surface of Greenland. And they found similar features, particularly the ridges in Greenland, which formed when pockets of water froze. Oddly enough, the same formations, these frozen ridges, can be seen all over Europa. If these are the same things, The shelves on Jupiter's moon also are formed from water, and that means that water is much more abundant on Europa than anyone ever thought. Scientists are now saying there's a global ocean under those ridges, probably with more water than Earth. The issue here is that the hidden ocean is separated from the surface by an immensely thick ice sheet. And since we're so far away, there isn't a lot scientists can do to see what's underneath that layer of ice. For all we know, there could be a whole civilization of underwater creatures living on Jupiter's moon. Number 6. An underground city. In 2022, researchers in Turkey announced the discovery of yet another massive underground city. This one could very well be the biggest in the entire world. If you're familiar with Turkey's mysterious subterranean villages, you'll know there are quite a few of them. There are so many underground villages in Turkey, it's a wonder anyone still lives above ground. But according to the director of the Mardin Museum, this newest city is very different from other subterranean lairs discovered in the Anatolia region. Archaeologists found it during excavations in the Midyat district in the city of Mardin. First, archaeologists discovered a cave, then a system of passageways and corridors leading down into an underground settlement with silos, water wells, ancient altars, and all the necessities of life 2,000 years ago. People built it as a hiding place, probably used by the Christians in the 2nd century when they were being persecuted. Christian families would have taken shelter deep underground to escape the Romans. Then, after so many years, the underground city was carved out to house larger numbers of people. Eventually, it became an ordinary place to live. Archaeologists believe the city was used uninterruptedly for about 1,900 years, before being abandoned roughly a century ago. At its peak, about 70,000 people lived in the nameless underground town. How would you feel about living underground? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more amazing discoveries. Number 5. The most distant galaxy. Astronomers have just spotted what they say is the most distant galaxy ever. I mean that astronomers have identified the galaxy located farthest from our own. It's called HD1, and scientists say it contains some of the first stars that ever existed, along with a deadly supermassive black hole. They estimate the galaxy to be about 13.5 billion light-years away. That's roughly 100 million light-years further than the second most distant galaxy from us, a place called GNZ11. You might not think scientists could work out many details about a galaxy so far away, but they have. The main thing they noticed is that the universe is extraordinarily bright, radiating ultraviolet light. They believe this is because the galaxy produces over 100 stars annually, emitting incredible energy. They also say the supermassive black hole in HD1 could be about 100 million times bigger than the Sun at its center. Let that sink in for a second. Not just a bit more massive than the Sun, but 100 million times more massive. It's the oldest black hole ever observed, crowded by the earliest stars ever. According to Fabio Pacucci from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, these stars are interesting because the first stars in the universe were hotter, more luminous, and way more significant than the ones that came after, like our own Sun. Number 4. Roman bust at Goodwill. In San Antonio, a trip to Goodwill turned out extremely profitable for one unsuspecting woman. In 2018, art collector Laura Young walked into her local Goodwill store and saw a sculpture that she liked the look of. She thought it was a marble bust that looked oddly ancient for being in a Goodwill. She paid $35 for it, and now, 4 years later, it's on display at the San Antonio Museum because it turns out it's hundreds of years old. It went missing in Germany during World War II. This statue was once in the collection of King Ludwig I, ruler of Bavaria. It turns out the statue is a Roman bust, made in either the 1st century BC or the 1st century AD. It depicts the son of Pompey the Great, the man who Julius Caesar defeated. Thousands of years later, King Ludwig I bought it, stashed it away in his collection, and then an American soldier looted it during the war. This soldier must have brought it back to the United States, and it probably stayed in someone's house, was passed down through generations, and then wound up in a dusty old box and donated with other attic junk. It made one heck of a journey from ancient Rome to modern America. And as much as Laura wanted to keep the precious piece of history for herself, She did the right thing by handing it over to the professionals at the museum. What would you do if you found a precious historical artifact? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Cephalopod genomes. The genes of a cephalopod are arguably the best genes of any animal ever. These creatures are clever, sophisticated, and the closest things we have on the planet to actual aliens. They can change their color to camouflage themselves, solve puzzles, and are still surprising us. A recent new analysis of cephalopod genes has shown something extraordinary in their genome. Developmental biologist Caroline Albertin called their genome churned up. Caroline and her colleagues sequenced the genomes of 3 soft-bodied cephalopods: the California two-spot octopus, the Atlantic longfin inshore squid, and the Hawaiian bobtail squid. What the researchers discovered is quite complex. First of all, they found that the evolution of cephalopods through time was just as intense as the evolution of human beings. We both evolved similarly, especially in our brains becoming hugely cognizant. The difference is that cephalopods, rather than duplicating genomes to get different results, completely rearrange their genomes as if they threw them in a blender. In other words, they did a kind of genetic shuffle that gifted them with all of these bizarre attributes and impressive cognitive abilities. In addition, the rearranging of the genomes granted them the most powerful nervous system of any invertebrate, over 500 million neurons. Scientists confirmed that cephalopods could edit their brain genes. They can do their own RNA editing, allowing them to adapt to any new environment very quickly. Whereas most animals are at the mercy of evolution, squids and octopuses seem to have evolved beyond that to a point where they can now adapt to rapidly shifting catastrophes by editing their genetic makeup, almost on the spot. Number 2. The Merlin manuscript. Archaeologists have discovered an ancient medieval manuscript buried in a Bristol archive in England. The manuscript tells the story of Merlin, the great wizard from the legends of King Arthur. Academics at the library came across 7 parchment fragments hidden inside random volumes written between 1494 and 1502. However, the fragments are much older, written around 1250 or 1275. After doing multispectral imaging, assessing the ink, and looking at the writing style, the experts believe the story was handwritten in the northeast of France. Here's where things get a little strange. Experts were able to read this particular variant of the story of Merlin. They found that it's basically the same as all the other legends of Merlin, except really toned down, like the writer omitted certain things because they were too adult. Specifically, an intimate encounter between Merlin and the enchantress Vivian, also called the Lady of the Lake. There is a long back and forth between Merlin and Vivian in most manuscripts, and it gets pretty erotic. But in this version, all that stuff has been taken out. Of course, they still have a meeting, but it's all very innocent. Somebody took the already established story of Merlin, then transcribed it themselves, but left out all the steamy details they didn't like. Number 1. Red trails. In North Carolina's Outer Banks, there's been a lot of UFO activity, and very recently there's been an explosion of it. It all began when a man took time-lapse images of the Milky Way galaxy, which was amazing. But when Wes Snyder looked at his final shots, he couldn't help but notice some weird red swirling trails in the sky. These red trails weren't part of space, nothing in the galaxy. Instead, they seemed to be moving intelligently. Snyder was a bit baffled by what he saw in the photos. He took each picture with an exposure of 10 seconds, and only 1 second passed between each image. Plus, Snyder is no stranger to the trails of jets and airplanes. Anyone who takes these photographs is used to getting planes and other things caught traveling through their pictures. You can even see the regular trails of aircraft in his pictures, but he's never caught anything before with these kinds of capabilities. Whatever was moving through the sky had incredible maneuverability and seemed to be circling something on purpose. We still don't know what left behind these bizarre red trails circling through the sky with incredible speed, but for sure there is something weird going on at the Outer Banks. Do you think a UFO was seen at an English beach? Let me know your theories in the comments, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!